Hi all, this is a quick update on Hexplorer. This video is going to be a little off the cuff and unscripted, so I'm basically just going to be giving an overview of the app and where the current development is, what I'm working on. So for anyone who is not sure what this is, Hexplorer is a tool designed for either dungeon masters or solo tabletop role-playing game players who want to have a wilderness or an outdoor overland map generated for them. So basically it generates the entire world for you and it creates a series of biomes. You can see this is kind of an example world that I've set up. But if I was playing Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or any other game, Iron Sworn, whether I was a solo player or just a dungeon master, basically I could use this tool to create a random world for the party to explore. So this is just a test map that I created. The worlds that the tool generates are basically infinite. It's limited essentially only by your hardware capabilities. Right now it runs on Mac and iPad. I'm looking into adding support to Android, Windows, and other platforms at the moment. But basically the world is unlimited, and you can see this red arrow basically just shows where the current location is. If I want to travel to an adjacent hex, I have a travel button right here. I can click that to travel, and you can see the map moves to show my current location. On the desktop there's also keys you can use if you're traveling pretty quickly over a series of long roads or something. You can see that the world is completely randomly generated, but it does so in a way that tries to make sense for, you know, an actual ecosystem. So one of the things I've always found annoying with randomly generated hex maps is that they often have things like a jungle right next to a desert, or, you know, an ocean right next to a desert, and this tries to avoid that. It's not perfect, but it tries to avoid that by creating or using internally some noise algorithms that create more organic looking noise. And so you can see if I start exploring, you can see that there's sort of clusters of similar terrain types grouped together. So usually you won't see a lot of, for example, just mountains by themselves. What you'll see is mountains transitioning into hills, and then the hills transition into grasslands and that kind of thing. And instead of seeing, you know, one hex where there might be snow just stuck in the middle, you'll see these little patches in the larger world where for whatever reason there happens to be, you know, a cold spot. One of the features is this new region feature. So when you're exploring a larger world, it sort of takes the concept of, you know, say a planet or a continent and breaks that apart into regions, region being one discrete singular map. And then if you wanted to travel between individual regions, you could do that. And that allows you to do some cool things. So for example, let's say I'm exploring one area of the continent and it's a very diverse section of the map where there's a variety of different types of terrain. I would use a biome or a region kind of like this, where it's got a little bit of everything. You can see there's some snow over here, there's some deserts, but there's also grasslands, tundra, hills, you know, everything. But let's say I wanted to travel to the eastern part of the continent. Well, right now the way that works is you define these regions. So if I go over to here and I click region, I could say, okay, the party is traveling to the eastern side of the continent, and over there we know that it's desert. So we create a new region, and basically that takes us into this essentially new map. And this is once again completely limitless in size, but this map is going to be all desert basically, and you can do that with any number of regions. You can add other types of regions. So let's say I wanted a snow region. And the cool thing is, you know, these are customizable as with everything else. As I'm exploring, you know, and building out the world, I can rename regions. So we'll just call this Snow Continent. Not a very creative name, but and then if we can travel back to that desert region, you can see it remembers where we were as a convenience. Although you can jump around to hexes if you want. So you can see that I could rename this desert region. One thing I wanted to mention, by the way, really quickly, this UI is all very rough, so it's not very pretty right now, so I'm aware of that, so please forgive the rough UI. That's all kind of a work in progress. So regions essentially allow you to just have different areas of the world that can have potentially different biomes. This region right here is, we'll just call it like Central Continent or something like that. But this region right here is using what's called just the varied biome, which is just, as you can see, varied terrain. So the worlds that it generates, maybe I should talk a little bit about that now. So the world that it generates contains basically all the content you would usually need for your adventure. So as you travel the world, it's generating roads. You can see that there are roads you can take that lead to different areas. There are these lines right here that go into and out of the hexes. In addition to the roads and the terrain types, each individual hex has a number of generated content to it. So these little icons indicate a lot of that. You can see this T is for town. This indicates a landmark. Over here on this hex, this has a D for a dungeon. And you can see when I click on the hex, up here at the top, it gives also a whole bunch of other information. So up here we have the name of the region that I had just renamed to Central Continent. It has the name of the hex, so you can see this is called Mournful Fields, this stretch of grassland right here. And all of this is procedurally generated, all of it is random, it's virtually limitless. There's obviously a finite number of combinations of words that it can make, but there are, I haven't calculated, but there's a lot of possibilities. It's all generated randomly, so every time you explore the world, things are going to be a little bit different, and you never know really what to expect. And you can see that when I am in a town, or excuse me, when I'm in a hex that has a town and a landmark, you can see up here it gives me details about that. So it shows the level of the town, the name of it. It's called the Town of the Beneficent Demon. Some of the names, because they're randomly generated, aren't always the best, but you can rename anything you want. So if you don't like a name, you can change it. So this hex has a town and a landmark. It also shows me just general statistics. It shows me a level of food and water. So if I click on this desert hex, you can see that this is going to be scarce food and water. It also shows a danger level. This is just an abstract value between 1 and 10 that you can use for general purpose things. And so you can also see it tells you the difficulty of the terrain to traverse. So this is all based on the suggestions from Pathfinder 2e. So one of the things that I'm working on is support for different rule systems. So you can see it allows you to select some options here, whether it's Pathfinder or D&D, and that will change some of these details. So for example, if I've got it set to Pathfinder, these adjacent hexes are going to show a travel activity count. And that is in line with the Pathfinder 2nd edition Hexploration rules from the Game Mastery Guide. So taking a step back, going back to the content, these hexes, it generates landmarks, towns. The towns in particular have a whole set of additional information. So every town that's generated has kind of an image just to spark your creativity. It gives you a level for the town. It gives you an alignment. This is a lawful good town. It gives you a population. And it'll even generate a local tavern for you, and kind of a brief description of that. And that is different for every town. So if I go down here, you can see this town is called Hamlet of the Dire Farmer. And you can see it's a completely different, set of properties, and all of this is generated for you, and it's all infinite, totally procedurally generated. One of the other things that the game keeps track of is weather. So it has this weather generator. Right now this is set to use some rules from Pathfinder. So you'll see things like this, in parentheses, this extreme temperature, which corresponds to mild, severe, and extreme from the Pathfinder rule set. But you could use this however you wanted for any game, but as you traverse the world, the weather will change. If you want to, you can also manually re-roll it if you need to do that for some reason. So I mentioned before that the content was customizable, so one of the things you can do is add notes, or you can change hexes, so I'll show you that right now. So let's say I'm over here in this hex, and we have a dungeon called the Hero Stronghold. So if I wanted to, I can go up here to these buttons, and I can view every dungeon that is currently visible on the map. And if I want to, I can jump to it, or I can edit any of these. So, and as a convenience, it shows you the item that in the hex you're currently on up here at the top. So again, right here, this tile has this Hero Stronghold. If I go to Dungeons, here's Hero Stronghold up at the top. And if I want to, I can rename it, let's call it Spooky Dungeon. And then you can see up here that, the name has changed. And if I go to Dungeons, you can see that the name is now changed here. And you can see based on the delete buttons, you can delete any content that you don't want. If you know that you don't want a dungeon in a hex for some reason, or you want to get rid of a town, you can edit everything. The same is true for adding content. So let's say for some reason I know that I want to add a town to this hex. I can just add this. I select the town size, and let's say we want a large city, and there we go. It generates a large city, level 10 large city, and if I go to town details, you can see this has a pretty big population and stats relevant for the level and the population size. One of the other features I've added is a rumor feature. So sometimes when you're playing the game, you may want to add a random type of content to the map in an area that you haven't explored. So let's say your party is in a town and they hear about a dungeon that's some distance away, and they are given a quest to go slay a monster in the dungeon. Well, you wouldn't really be able to just select that tile out here in the middle of this unexplored area because you haven't gone there yet. So what you can do is go up to this rumor button, and you select the type of content that your party has heard about in the rumor or the quest or whatever. And so let's say we've heard about a dungeon, and then you can select kind of a random distance that represents how far away it is. Let's say it's a journey level distance, which will be on average about 6 to 10 hexes away. I select that, and you can see now it has automatically generated a hex that's kind of far away, but it has that dungeon. And so now the surprise element isn't ruined, because now I can continue to explore all this unknown area on our journey to the hex. But once I get there, the dungeon's already created, and I can just define those using this automated tool. So you can edit hexes with basic things like adding notes. So I can just add a note to a hex, and then it gives it this little icon. You can also change the terrain type. So if for some reason I wanted to force this hex to be a forest, I can change it to a forest. You can add roads. So if I wanted to add a road going to the east, I can go ahead and change that. There's a road going between these two hexes. I guess I should also mention these trackers down in the corner. These are kind of a work in progress. The intention was to provide an automated way of tracking distance and time. So you can see as I travel, it's adding the distance of the hex tile to the travel distance. Then over here, this also is just a general time tracker you can use if you want to keep track of the time of day manually. So yeah, that's just a quick overview and tour. If anyone is curious about this or wants to learn more about it, please feel free to comment or message me. The goal is to release it eventually, but that's still a work in progress. But yeah, anyway, thank you for checking out the video, and yeah, please feel free to subscribe if you want to keep an eye on the development as it progresses. And I'll be updating again hopefully soon. All right, see ya.